Hello and welcome to Englilearn. Today we are tackling a crucial skill for the Cambridge 9093 exam, analyzing form. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. Form, isn't that just what the text is? Well, you're half right. The good news is in the exam, they usually tell you the form. You don't have to guess if the text you're reading is a speech or a memoir, for example. But your job isn't just to identify the form. You need to analyze how the writer uses the specific conventions of that form to communicate their message effectively. To help you with just that, I've put together a comprehensive handout and we're going to walk through it step by step. As always, you can find the link to the handout in the description below. First, let's start with deconstructing the context. This is the information that is given in the exam paper. First of all, you need to acknowledge the given form. What form has the exam paper told you this is? State this clearly in your introduction. This sounds obvious, but it sets the stage for your further analysis. Next, establish the implied audience and purpose. Based on that given form, who is the text for and what is it trying to achieve? For example, a speech implies a live audience and probably a persuasive or informative purpose. On the other hand, a travel memoir, for example, suggests an audience of interested readers with the purpose of entertaining and reflecting. Then analyze the specific context. What other details are provided? The source, the author, the date, maybe some kind of an event. How does this shape your expectations? For example, if the text is a speech given by a charity CEO in 2023, you would expect a formal, persuasive tone and maybe some modern references, right? Okay, so once you nail the context, it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. Analyzing textual conventions. This is where you gather your evidence from the text itself. First, let's look at register, tone, and voice. Examiners love when you comment on this. Take a look at what the level of formality is. Is it formal, informal, or maybe semi-formal? Does this match the form and context? What pronouns are being used? I for personal reflection in a memoir, you for direct address in a speech, or we and our for an inclusive feel in an article. And then you can talk about the tone. How would you describe the tone? There are so many words that can be used to describe tone. Enthusiastic, critical, nostalgic, objective, satirical. And crucially for your form analysis, how is that tone conventional for the given form? Next, we can look at the lexical and grammatical patterns and the typical language choices for the form. So you're connecting language with the form. When looking at vocabulary or lexis, you need to think about what types of words jump out. For example, in a travelogue, you will most likely have some emotive language. In a review, you will expect persuasive adjectives. In a formal or a scientific article, you will expect to see some technical terms. And in terms of sentence structure, look if there are rhetorical questions, imperatives, or triadic lists or lists of three. Those would be present in a speech most likely. In a broadsheet article, you would most likely find more complex sentences than in a magazine article for teens, for example. Next, let's look at layout and graphology. So this is the part where we look at how the text is organized visually. This is connected with the structure, but you are looking at those elements of structure that are linked closely to what the genre is. So when we look at paragraph lengths and breaks, we can look at short and single sentence paragraphs that give a dramatic impact in a long article, and we can also think about long and descriptive paragraphs in a memoir, for example. If there are headlines and subheadings, how do they function? Do they use, for example, puns, alliteration, or direct questions to fit the genre? And finally, you can look at typographical features like italics or bolding. These can be used for emphasis, in titles, and to indicate reported spoken words. Now, you've gathered all the evidence that is present in the text, but simply listing these features isn't enough to get the top marks. So again, you need to think about the big why. You need to synthesize all this information and make your answer really high level. So you're thinking about why these specific conventions are effective for this text's purpose and audience. So don't just say the writer uses direct address. Explain why that direct address is impactful. For example, the writer uses direct address throughout the speech, which is a key convention which creates a personal connection with the live audience of the speech and makes the persuasive message more impactful. Next, you can link to the message. So how do the conventions of the form reinforce the writer's overall message or argument? You can also connect form to structure and language. How does the text form work with the structure, like the order of paragraphs, and the specific language, like metaphors or imagery, to create a cohesive and powerful whole? Finally, here is a short exam tip. You need to be selective. You can't write about everything. Choose several most significant formal conventions the writer uses and build your analysis around them. Quality over quantity, always. Again, remember that in your exam, you're not going to have a checklist like this and you're not going to need it. You are going to practice so much before the exam that this is going to become your second nature. Also, once again, you're never analyzing form on its own. You're analyzing it in connection with form, structure, and language. All of those elements need to work together in your commentary. So there you have it, your complete guide to analyzing form for the Cambridge 9093 exam. If you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Englilearn for more exam tips, and let me know in the comments what other topics you'd like me to cover. Thanks for watching and happy exam season, everyone!